Well, my story with regard to my involvement with philanthropy and being involved with a charitable organisation started probably 30 years ago when my then 12-year-old daughter was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And I felt at the time there was nothing to support children and families who had type 1 diabetes, and that's really how I started, was to make a difference for my daughter and all the other children who were suffering with type 1 diabetes, because I found at the time there was nothing in existence to help and support them. Well, my daughter, what happened to my daughter was that she was diagnosed at 12. Prior to that, she was brilliant in every area, sport, academic, everything she took on, she was very, very good at. And she was diagnosed with type 1, and of course that was a terrible shock, not only to her but to her family. And I think at that particular time when she was diagnosed, she never ever really accepted that she came down with a chronic disease, and that was very difficult for her for quite some time to not really necessarily accept, but know that she was a bit different to the kids sitting next to her at school. Her passing, it was no different to what I'd been doing the previous 20 years. I had been supporting research for a long time prior to Danielle's death, so it was nothing new about what I was doing. The only difference is when she died, I decided in my own mind, and when I was bringing her back on the plane and when she died on the plane, that I wasn't going to give up the quest to find a cure for type 1 diabetes, and that's 10 years ago, and I continue to work very, very hard to fund medical research. My achievements and the achievements of the organisations I'm associated with, when you look back in retrospect over the last 20 or 30 years, at the time when she was diagnosed, there was very little being done in the area of research. And I can recall when she was diagnosed in 1982, trying to seek out doctors or researchers as to who was doing what. And to my surprise, I only found 2 doctors or 2 researchers, one in Melbourne and one in Canberra. And the gentleman in Canberra, he died about 15 years ago. And I saw the absolute need to help fund medical research in this country. So, and the area of complication was not even spoken about. I mean, you'd ask your doctor, well, you know, my daughter was very intelligent. She'd say, what could happen to me? And he would say, well, at that particular time, times have changed, that's for sure. Oh, well, if you go home and do as I say, you'll be fine. Well, that was not the case with my daughter. And in the area of minimising the complications, equipment has become far more sophisticated. We've got insulin pumps, we've got glucose monitoring. All those things weren't around back in that time. So now our children can lead a reasonably good and healthy life with the aid of the equipment that is now available for the children with type 1. Medical research in this country is incredibly important. Besides being involved with juvenile diabetes, I am also involved with an institute here in Melbourne, St Vincent's Institute, and we cover more than one disease. We cover about 8 diseases, because no doubt in a person's lifetime, whether it be them or their family or a family member or friends, will come across someone suffering with a disease. I personally was impacted with cancer 5 years ago, not thinking that it would ever happen to me. And I looked to those researchers at that time to save my life. And there are so many other people just like me. When you're sick, what's the first thing you do? You go to your doctor and you look for medical research. You look to those researchers to save your life and give you quality of life. So I didn't realise that whilst I was working hard for juvenile diabetes, that I in fact would be hit with an autoimmune disease such as cancer. And I looked at those researchers to save my life. And that's what we do. This is what we do when we're sick. We look to them for medical research and the advancements of the treatment. And I know that the cancer that I had 20 years ago, I wouldn't be here talking about what happened to me 5 years ago. whilst everything's going along smoothly, I don't think really it's something that you consider too much. And it's so important that we have this medical research, because when it does hit home, you know who to go to. In the area of where I see the future of medical research is, it's going to be more about quality of life. We are living longer, and whilst we're living longer, it's about the quality of the life whilst we're living longer. I mean, in my position with when I was quite ill, I didn't think I was going to live, but I am here today to say I'm living, and I know I'm going to live a lot longer because of the expertise of the researchers in this country. So I would say to anyone who thinks that they will not be impacted by illness, they're fooling themselves, because when it does hit, you'll be looking for help.